Now, so I read your book, a little bit of it, and so I know that you used to think that you had to like get quiet and find your spirituality in the quiet, but then
That's
it
right.
totally transformed into what it is today. So can you
That's
talk a
right.
little bit about that and when the podcast became part of the journey?
Oh, yes, love this question. And it is like part of the process is about getting quiet. And then what happens a lot of times, and I wrote about this in a book too, and I speak about this often. I realized that it isn't about living, as I call the zombie zen, how we equate spiritual seekers and spiritual teachers as the zombie zen. You have to talk like this. You have to, look like that. You have to wear these kinds of clothes. You have to do these kinds of things, and this kind of forced seriousness is so imposed on the spiritual seeker. And oh my goodness, the spiritual guide could never do any of the things that I do, right, according to some people. But then I realized that my most transformative experiences with my spiritual teachers in very traditional settings like India, and Nepal, at monasteries and ashrams in these parts of the world, the most transformative experiences happened with joy, with laughter, with humor, with playfulness, with this light-heartedness. But I felt that I couldn't let my freak flag fly. I couldn't let my sassy nature fly because I thought that that was not spiritual. And then I had this revelatory moment where I was like, no, you do need to get quiet. But then once you experience that peace and that arises from being quiet and going inward, then it's really about showing the world what freedom looks like. And freedom, the outward expression of freedom looks different for everybody. For me, it's bold, loud, fierce, being androgynous and really expressing my queerness. For other people, looks different. It may be a little bit more quiet, a little bit more subdued in a variety of different ways, but the inner experience of freedom is the same for everybody. So I am just a permission slip for people to recognize that once they glimpse and experience this inner freedom, then the outward expression, if it's going to look freaky and sassy and bold and loud and flamboyant, that's okay too. Doesn't matter what some people on a spiritual path have said to you, that does not equate liberation. I'm here to say that it does, because I am a living, I'm living proof of it. And of course, with the blessing from people from my lineage and my training too, that's like joy is the way to liberation. And then to talk about the Spiritually Sassy show, the podcast, which, first of all, I'm so grateful for your platform. And I'm so grateful for everyone who's listening to this show and making the show such a success in such a short amount of time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What's happened is I needed another outlet to express my creativity, and to also communicate with other people in the space, and to have hard conversations with people in the space. I talk a lot about I have a set of questions on the podcast that I ask every guest. And a lot of times when I realize, I'm like, oh my God, the conversation I have with my friends when we're just hanging out at home, they should be recorded, because these conversations are so transformative. They're like so enlightening. They need to be on the record. People need to listen to these things. And that's another thing that I realized, like, okay, like, let's use the platform of a podcast for this long form content. And then let's talk about specific questions that oftentimes, you know, sometimes when you are, engaging with people, you may talk about specific things, or you may, kind of just have more casual conversations sometimes. But I wanted to utilize the fact that I have access to so many amazing people to ask them really, really deep, powerful questions. And one question that I ask every guest on the show is a question of forgiveness. How does forgiveness play a role in your life? And the answers are like, oh my God, they're just amazing.